Today is April 9th, 2016, and we're in Uvalde, Texas. I am Bridget Benestante with the Voces Oral History Project, and I'm interviewing Sergio Porras. Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for taking the time to talk about the Uvalde Walkout and your life. So I wanted to start off by asking you what it was like growing up in Uvalde.
Oh, hell of an experience. Again, I was not, I could say active in the walkout, but not a product of the walkout. Of course, we volunteered to serve as tutors for all those students that got involved with the walkout. We participated, we came up with the organization, as you probably know or heard of, Mayo.
Before that, what did you do in the community? How did you spend your time here?
Well, all I could say is that the reason that we had a walkout was that we were not allowed to speak Spanish. And of course, discrimination was there, obviously. But mainly that was one of the reasons to do that. And I remember not actually walking out of the walkout, which was April, about 10 o'clock. It all kind of happened per se, where we all decided, hey, we had enough of this. Why don't we do a huelga or let's walk out? And all of a sudden, it happened. It just happened.
Before the walkout, you said you weren't allowed to speak Spanish. Did anybody else that you knew ever get punished for speaking Spanish?
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
When did that? Do you remember a specific story of when that happened?
Back then, they would take you to the front of the room, and with a ruler, you can get your pants up there. We're talking Spanish.
Did that ever happen to you?
No, not per se.
Okay.
No.
But when you went home, you were able to speak Spanish, correct?
That was our primary language.
Yeah. And what, were you born in Uvalde, or did you move here later?
I was born in Harlingen. We moved here back in '53.
And
so I've been here ever since.
How old were you when you moved here?
I was born in '51, so we're talking about three years.
Okay. So what was your schooling like? Did you like going to school? In elementary school and middle school?
Well, it was an experience, I'll tell you that much. It was segregated, you could say. In fact, we had the section of town where we were divided, of course, Hispanics and whites. In fact, we had a school especially for blacks.
Do you remember where those schools were located in the town?
In my own neighborhood.
So all three schools were in your neighborhood, or were they on different?
Well, in other words, depending on what grade you were in, you know, Hispanics here from 1st to 3rd grade. Then, of course, you had a separate schools for whites for that particular grade, and so on. So that's the way it was set up.
And how young were you when you realized that the schools were segregated like that? Do you remember realizing that they were segregated based on race?
Well, actually it didn't ring on me until maybe I was in the 4th grade.
And do you remember how you realized it?
For one reason is I was attending the school that used to be all black school. Okay, it was a two-room for the school, which is Nicholas School. And in fact, we got it, it's a historic site as we speak. That came about.
And when you realized this, do you remember how you felt about it? Even though you were in the 4th grade, do you remember feeling?
Well, actually, I think it was accepted. It was no big deal, you know. It was common, per se.
Would you say that you thought it was normal, or you thought that was the way things were? Did you feel like things shouldn't be like that?
I felt it wasn't fair. I felt that, you know, we were treated as a second-class students, you know.
Who were your teachers?
Miss Brown.
And
I remember her very clearly.
why do you remember her? Was she a good teacher? Or?
I could say fair. I remember I didn't know a word of English. My 1st grade, anyway. And I remember saying, Maestra, ¿me puedo ir para la casa? Meaning, can I go home? She said, oh no, you can't go home. No vamos. So, but other than that, I think she was pretty fair.
So, how was it like not knowing English in the 1st grade, but not being able to speak Spanish in school? How did you deal with that?
Actually, I didn't feel that. I didn't notice that until that I saw it, per se. It didn't really happen to me, per se. It didn't bother me as far as not having to speak Spanish. We would do it anyway, regardless, unless you get caught. Okay. I remember he was ashamed to take tacos to school. I mean, nowadays, I remember back in junior high, we would trade tacos for sandwiches with the white kids. I really didn't know or notice the discrimination until I got to the 6th grade. Really, that's where I saw the difference.
And what would happen?
Well, they would call you, you were dirty Mexican. You take a shower Mexican, or go home, or anything had to do, or I had to work at the cafeteria to earn so I could eat. Okay. Mexican kids sit at the back of the room, and the white kids in the front room. Privileges, just about the same. But I saw the difference there, where we were treated differently, big time.
And what was it like working in the school cafeteria? Do you remember what you would do?
It was normal. It was normal for me. It was normal for everybody to work in the cafeteria. Instead of taking a lunch, we worked so we could eat free. So.
Would you eat while you were working, or would you eat after you?
Prior.
Okay.
Prior, before you go to work, yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier when we were doing the questionnaire that you didn't know your father that well. Did you ever meet him, or was it just you and your mom?
I don't remember much on him. In fact, not even pictures. For one reason, I think there was a big flood in Piedras Negras. Supposedly, according to Mom, we lived in Eagle Pass, and the big flood came about where it took pictures of everything and anything. So we never even got to see the pictures of my dad. And my mom never talked too much about him either. So other than she said, you know, he took out to the drugstore, he never came back. And that was it.
And how was it growing up with just a single mom? Did you notice any differences with you and your friends, or?
Not really. I never missed him, that I could say. I didn't know what it was to have a dad, or, no.
did your mom, do you remember what your mom did to support you and your siblings, or?
Well, I remember she used to work at, I don't know if I missed that. Anyway, she used to work at the packing shed. Okay, that's how we got as far as made a living out of that. I was the oldest one. I used to pick up bottles on weekends and sell them for a penny, and that would go towards the household. Okay.
And when you did that, can you walk me through what a day was like on the weekend, waking up and?
It was fun. I enjoy that very much, knowing that I got up early. I'm a morning person, and go around the neighborhood or the business and pick up. It used to be Coke bottles, and collect those. And I enjoy that very much. Just the thing of doing that. It wasn't much that the money involved, other than, of course, it motivated me to do that, but a penny a bottle.
And what would you say made it so enjoyable for you? Was it just the work, or was there a certain thing that made it a good?
Well, I felt good about making a penny, selling those bottles, making a penny out of it. And that would buy me some toys that I really wanted that I couldn't afford otherwise. So.
How old were you when you were doing this on the weekends?
I'm thinking about 6 or 7 years old. Mm-hmm.
And how long did you do that for?
Oh, I don't know. I can't remember. I do remember that I enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. It was a challenge. It really was.
I'm going to go back to your schooling.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned earlier that in the 6th grade you started noticing the discrimination. Going forward, as you got older and went into high school, did that change at all, or did you notice it get worse or get better, or was it pretty much the same?
I don't know. I don't think it changed much. Uvalde was divided in half. We had the railroads to divide the town from the Hispanics to whites. I remember going to the drive-in. If you get caught on the north side of Uvalde, you're going to get a whipping. They would lasso you, all right? And you were going to get bit. I mean.
And it was the police that would do it, or just the people would do it?
I'm talking about maybe school kids, or
And did you know anybody that happened to, or did that happen to you ever?
Oh, I was in one of those rumbles, yes. In fact, yes. And of course, if we had a white on this side of the track, the same thing would happen. And that's the way it was. It was no big deal. Of course, you report that to the sheriffs, and the sheriffs would turn the cheek. No, that didn't happen, or they blew it away,
Do you remember what specifically happened when you did get in that fight? What happened that day?
It was just a normal thing where, I'm talking about in the drive-in. We were at the open drive-in, okay? And you come up with 3 guys, white guys, and it's going to be a rumble. Just being there. No actual reason to say, just got into it. That's the way it was.
So how old were you when the walkout started?
17.
Were you a senior?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And before the walkout started, did you know it was coming? Did you expect it at all, or was it kind of a surprise to you when it?
It happened all of a sudden. It was nothing that you were expecting to happen, no.
Had you heard about the Crystal City walkouts at all?
That's where it all started.
Okay.
That's where it all started.
And
it started there, then we wind up that we actually got into it too. Yes.
How did you hear about the Crystal City walkouts?
It was in the news. It was in the news that, the actual walkout and why they did it. And that's when I think it was a consensus here. Hey, if they can do it, we can do it. And that's how it happened, more or less.
Okay. And was this in the newspaper, the Uvalde newspaper, that you read it, or was it just being passed around by people?
Not much the newspaper really per se, other than it was not even in the news as far as media-wise, but word of mouth, really, that did it.
And the day of the walkout, can you tell me what happened the day it started, and where you were, what you did, starting from the minute you woke up?
Remember, I was not involved in the walkout.
Did you? But you were in Uvalde at the time, right?
Involved with it, yes.
But
not actually walking out of I was not in school when it happened, okay? And make that clear. But of course, I got involved being active on the walkout, per se.
When did you become active with it?
From day one.
So that day that it happened, what did you do?
We walked. I walked with the whole group that walked out of that particular high school. Okay.
Okay. And did you know the day before that you were going to participate the next day, or did someone? So who came to you and got you to participate?
A good friend of mine. Of course, he was part of the walkout. Actually, Amaro Cardona, who was the commissioner, passed away. He was one of the founders on that walkout.
And did you hesitate at all to participate?
No, not even.
Why didn't you hesitate? Were you motivated by anything to?
Just the thing was that we actually did walk out to protest, really. And that was the challenge. That was the experience to get involved. That motivated me, anyway, to do that. Again, if Crystal City did it, we can do it.
And what were you wanting out of the walkout? What demands did you want to be met by walking out?
I think there was a consensus as far as being treated equal, okay? And if you had a primary language, that you would be allowed to speak that language, okay? That was mainly what I was looking for, the change to that discrimination, as far as I can remember.
During the walkout, you mentioned, did you help with the huelga schools at all? Or did you attend them, or?
Well, once we started the walkout, we got involved with, the church got involved with the walkout. So they were holding meetings or tutoring classes to keep up with the grades. That was at the Catholic church.
Were they allowed to speak Spanish in these makeshift classes when they were being tutored?
That was the primary language. Yes.
And do you remember any community leaders in particular who were for the walkout, and even those who were against a walkout?
We had, for example, case in point, Mr. Garza, who was ex-mayor. He was one of the primary ones. Gilbert Torres, who was the commissioner, or was the commissioner. Gabriel Tafoya, and I could go on and on.
Who was against the walkout? And did you have anybody close to you that was against the walkout who you might have not agreed with at the time, since you did participate in it?
I know some family members within the neighborhood that were against it.
And what would they say to you?
Well, to me, no, not to me though, but they were against their kids walking out. Okay.
And what did your mom think about the walkout?
She was in favor.
Could you confide in her about the walkout, or was there a certain person that you talked to about what was going on?
Not per se, even though she did encourage me to be a part of it and to make sure that I go back to school regardless of the outcome, because she did want me to continue my education, of course.
How involved were you in organizing the walkout? Because I've heard that the walkout lasted 6 weeks.
More or less. Mm-hmm.
How involved were you throughout those 6 weeks in organizing the different protests or the classes? Were you involved in that?
Very little, very little. Mm-hmm.
Were you involved every day of the 6 weeks, or?
No, not per se. Maybe every other day, and we talk about maybe 2 to 3 hours. Mm-hmm.
And what would you do when you did participate in the walkout?
Mainly that we would seek people or people that supported the walkout as far as getting food or drinks and sodas, water, this sort of thing to feed those students that were participating.
And how did you stay motivated for that long?
I don't know. I just did.
Did you make any friendships, or maybe not so great friendships, during the time of the walkout? Because it was a time where people came together for something different. Do you remember any new relationships that you formed? Or did any relationships that you already had get closer because you were participating in this?
I don't know. I don't think so. Other than meeting other students that I hadn't met before, as far as getting involved with the protest itself.
And meeting other students and being with these people for one common reason, did you ever have a moment where you realized that, or did you already realize that people had the same frustrations as you?
Well, that was a definite yes, of course. Now, my only regrets that I could say to that point is that here we did all this here, we sacrificed 1 year of schooling, which we never got credit for, okay? Whoever walked out, they had to repeat that 1 year, okay? And I thought that was not winning or going anywhere other than because we lost, we had to repeat that 1 more year for schooling.
So on that same note, would you say that the walkout was worth it, even though you did have to repeat 1 year?
I think so. I think so. That started change in the school system, yes.
What changes did you see?
Well, I don't think we saw those changes right off the bat, okay? I think it took several years to see any result as far as having more Spanish-speaking teachers, okay? As far as being more lenient as far as, hey, you were allowed to speak Spanish if you needed to. Nothing wrong with that. But that didn't happen overnight, you know, so.
But do you think you do think that the walkout,
It'll contribute to that, yes, of course, yes.
and do you have a favorite memory from the walkout, like a specific one that?
I remember walking out and we went to Del Rio with the brown berets.
Can you tell me about that?
Well, it was a big crowd. We had some real good crowds out there with the brown berets, and we made a difference as far as the awareness of what was happening in Uvalde, what had happened in Crystal City prior to that. And I think they in fact, I could see some good out of it. Okay.
Did you see good out of it because there were so many people?
That were participating in the protest, yeah, on the walkout. Yes.
And why is that your favorite out of the whole 6-week walkout? Why would you say that's your favorite memory?
Because all those other people that we met, new acquaintances or new people, new leaders that we saw that really grew more than what there were, yeah.
Did you notice a change within yourself during this time?
Oh, definitely.
How so?
Felt good about it. Hey, I contribute to a change here that, you know, we're going to stop this discrimination. You know, we're going to make some changes here. And eventually we did.
Did the walkout kind of start a political awakening for you, or?
In a way, yes. I remember on the walkout where the county sheriff would be standing on the sidelines and Border Patrol would be throwing soap at us, at the protesters, you know, this sort of thing. The Texas Rangers were involved, Border Patrol were involved, city and county enforcement.
So after the walkout ended, what did you do?
I think I went to school. I went to Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska.
Why did you go to Nebraska?
To get my GED.
Was there a specific reason for going to that state? Did you have family there, or did you?
No, there was a program, HEP, which is a high school equivalency program, which is statewide. But the one out of Houston was doing that, and they were recruiting people that would qualify to get your GED, and we did that.
Is that where you met your wife, or when did you meet your wife?
No, I met her back in high school.
Oh, okay. So did you two date before you left for Nebraska, or how did you decide to get married?
She was my girlfriend since we were in 7th grade.
So when you went to Nebraska, how long were you there for?
I think it was 6 months.
And then did you come back
Came
here?
back. Mm-hmm.
And
you started college here.
I'd like to talk a little bit about your military service. When did you first find out that you got drafted before you signed up for the Navy?
When I received my draft notice.
When was that?
In May of '72.
And how did you decide that you were going to sign up for the Navy instead of?
Well, I figured if I get drafted, the Army's going to draft me. I'm going to go to Vietnam now. Maybe I won't be back. What are the chances? So I joined the Navy for 4 years instead.
And you said you married your wife the day before you left? What was that like?
Shotgun wedding. You could say that. Of course, you know, like I said, I met my wife back in the 7th grade, and we were dating all this time. Of course, she was pregnant, 3 months pregnant. So we had to tell her folks that, hey, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go to Vietnam, and we'll get married when I come back. And so her mom said, no, that's not going to happen. You're going to get married today, which was a Sunday. They even opened up the courthouse so they could give me a marriage license. Got to see our local doctor, Mr. Geis, who didn't even charge us for getting blood tests or this sort of thing. And I told him, well, I'm leaving for Vietnam tomorrow. She said, son, you go do your best, and I want to see you come back, and the fees are on me. I remember that. One day before I was supposed to leave for Vietnam, which I did. And of course, when I came back, took my wife to the hospital that night. Then she had a baby next day.
So being in Vietnam, or not in Vietnam, but being in the military and knowing you had a pregnant wife back at home, did that affect you at all, or how did you communicate with her?
Cassettes. I would record cassettes, besides the mail, of course.
So how was it when you were on the carrier in Vietnam? How was it fighting all the time? What was that like?
Well, we were working 18 hours, so, okay. The rest of the time, you either sleep, take a shower, or write a letter. That was it.
Did that have any kind of effect on you?
I don't know. Other than longing for my wife, you know. I took it as it came, you know. It had an effect on my mom. I would send her my paycheck to her. We get paid every 2 weeks, cash. We used to get paid cash every 2 weeks. So, and of course, we had a post office. We had a radio station, TV station. We had everything on the boat. So.
What was the radio station and television station on the boat? Was it just one, or?
We had a radio station and TV station.
And what would you watch?
Regular news, like everything else. Other than we found out we had won state Uvalde in football a week later, which was okay.
Did you notice any of the same discrimination that you had experienced in school and while you were in the military, or was it different?
No, I don't think so. No, I couldn't say that I did. No.
So when you were finally back here, did you come back to Uvalde because your wife was here?
No, I came back to Uvalde because I wanted to go to school, which I did.
And where did you go again?
Southwest Junior College.
Okay.
Came home and started school.
And when did you start to become politically active?
Even before I left, right after Walkout. I think that really changed everything for me as far as getting active. And I've been doing that ever since.
Since that happened to you, did you see a similar change like that in the community where members of your community were more active because of the walkout?
Oh, definitely. Yes. That happened.
How so?
But being active as far as not only in school issues, but local issues, whether it be water, whether it be, I remember a good portion of Uvalde didn't have running water or sewer services, you know, this sort of thing.
Was that in the areas where Mexican Americans or the black community lived?
Of course. It used to be, we had our outhouse was a regular thing.
And you personally, what did you what did you do after you got back to get involved with the community?
Well, let's see. I was unemployed for about 3 months after I came back, which was okay. Then I got hired by the state employment office, and I worked there for 30 years.
What was that like?
It was a job. I remember getting paid $388 a month for the state. I remember getting paid 11 times a year. 11 times a year. Let's say for the month of April, I wouldn't get paid for April until May 1st. Okay.
And as you mentioned earlier that you noticed that changes did start to happen, not immediately after the walkout, but later. When did you start realizing that those changes were happening, and how were they happening?
Well, from talking to the other people that got involved in the walkout, you could see the change where they were more concerned with issues, local issues, that deal with discrimination or otherwise. Okay.
Does the community still talk about the walkout?
Very little, depending on who you're talking to. Okay.
Why does that change, depending on who you're talking to?
Well, I'm saying if you're talking to one of the white folks here, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to talk about it because they were part of it.
Are there still some divisions that you see from the walkout? Are there still tensions there? Are those mostly smoothed out over time?
Well, it's not as bad as it used to. I could say that, yeah. Because now that we're living in 2016, how could I say this? Discrimination is still there, but not as much as you could see it back then. Okay. There used to be a lot of KKKs in town. Local people that were known that outright they would not disguise or otherwise. There's some old folks that are still there, you know, but now they don't show it. Okay, they hide their white coats in the closet.
Do you still see things that do need to change?
In what regard?
Do you still see discrimination, whether it be in education or in the workplace, or do you still see areas where white people are treated better than Mexican Americans or people of other races?
Not that much. No, not any that I can say. Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to talk about, if you don't mind, is I wanted to ask you about your battle with cancer. When did you find out that you had cancer?
I think that happened by not knowing that I did have it. It all started where I started losing my hair. I said, "Oh, what's going on?" You know, no pain whatsoever, as far as no symptoms per se. So I told my wife, you know, something's wrong here. Why am I losing my hair? Other than maybe I'm getting old or what? But I started feeling depressed for some reason or another. I don't know why, and that wasn't right. That wasn't me, you know. So I went ahead and go see my doctor, and they diagnosed it, and somehow they found out. Okay, they said, well, we're going to do take an examination here. We're going to do this and do that and see what's wrong out there and see what's happening here. And of course, I got diagnosed with that. It was lung cancer, but they found it was just starting. So I never got to go to the point where I needed any chemo or radiation. They went ahead and they scheduled a surgery for me. They went in there right through my ribs, and they cut. It was about the size of a silver dollar. They cut it, took it out, and so far, I'm doing good. It's been over 8 years. About a year later, though, I had a seizure. I never had a seizure. I didn't know what that was. But what happened, that one of the cells escaped from that cancer, and it went all the top to my head. And that seizure lasted, I'm thinking, and I'm assuming here, maybe 60 seconds or so. It seems like it was more than that, but it started shaking. And it was right after I saw the news. I was reading the paper. We were in bed. My wife was in the front room watching TV, and it just started shaking. I got up, sit on my bed, and continued shaking, like so. Then my jaw start turning sideways. I said, "Oh," that's when I really got scared. I said, "What's going on here?" Well, I tried to call my wife, and I couldn't say a word. I couldn't say not even one word. She finally heard me trying to say something here, and came to me, and she said, "What's going on?" I couldn't tell her what's going on, so we called 111, and EMS were there about 7 minutes, which was okay. Of course, by then, the seizure was gone. I had my shorts on. I was ready to go, whatever I need to do. And that's how it came about. But what it was is that cell that got away all the way to the top of my head. And they found that out the following day. I went to see the doctor, and they said, "Well, this is what we diagnosed. We're going to call your doctor in San Antonio, and we're going to have some exams and see what's going on here." Oh, the guys from the EMS, I told them what had happened, so they gave me those very small pills. They said, "Get it under your, maybe to eliminate another seizure, or to that effect." Anyway, but I was good. By the time they got there, it was gone. That seizure was gone. So here I go again to San Antonio, and they diagnosed it as it was about the size of a BB, right on top of the head. And they said, "Well, it's a good thing that it's there." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, because it's there, we can take care of it." And they did what they call a procedure. He said, "We can either go the old way or the new way." Bottom line, all they did was put a mask on me. And it lasted about 35 minutes. I had about 4 doctors there looking at me, and I was conscious about all this while it was happening. He said, "Well, what kind of music you want? What do you want to hear?" I said, "How about some smooth jazz? What do you want to hear? Sade." Well, I mean, they played it. So by the time I started hearing it, I got to see everything that they were doing out there. So what they did was the laser. They shot that BB size cell, and it disappeared, burned it completely. In 35 minutes, $96,000 for that. Good thing I had insurance to cover it, and it's a blessing. I'm still here. And I'm here for some reason, I know. So now I'm more involved with every aspect of the city here. I'm in the zoning, I'm the chairman, I'm a commissioner with the Housing Authority. I sit on the board for the appraisal district. I'm active in all political adventures here, and I'm for Bernie Sanders. I'm going to start a revolution here.
Great.
But it's a blessing. It's still here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Is there anything you want to add before you wrap things up? Anything you feel like I didn't get to?
No, not now. Maybe when I go home.
Well, thank you so much.
You bet.
Appreciate it.